Welcome to Trauma Recovery Anonymous, the podcast. My name is Richard and I am your host. As you're aware by now, I'm a Christian trauma therapist. I believe that the problems we suffer in life through trauma or anything else causes a hole in our soul, a broken spirit. And I try to help people with the idea of healing the hole in the soul. But my way isn't for everybody. Not everybody is open to a spiritual solution. Many people have been church hurt, have issues around the idea of God. And so I've looked for guests on my show who have another solution. And this guest today, Darlene Greene, is someone who suggests that if we heal the body, we can achieve anything. I like this concept, this approach, and I'm going to ask her to tell us more about who she is, what she is, and we'll get into a conversation to help you understand Darlene's approach, that maybe this is the approach that works for you. Darlene, good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard. It's an honor to be with you today.
I don't know if I'm calling you Darlene or Darling. My father, God rest him, used to call everybody Darling. He used to get in terrible trouble. And someone come into his shop and he'd say, "How can I help you, Darling?" He'd say, "Who are you to call me Darling?" So it's reminding me of my father, your name. Thank you very much for that gift of remembrance from my father. So thank you very much for coming on. You created a program called the Returning Warrior Workshop. Would you like to expand on that for us and tell a bit about that for the audience?
Sure. So I'm a retired U.S. Navy commander. I served 20 years. And in the final tour of duty, I was responsible for 1,200 people, 800 Navy and 400 Marines. They were being deployed overseas to war, to Afghanistan and other locations for 1 year away from their families, sometimes on no notice, sometimes on a week or 2 weeks notice. And when they returned, they were struggling. They were struggling to reintegrate with their families. They were struggling to reintegrate to their jobs. Many had post-traumatic stress disorder. Many were very lonely. Many felt the mission was undone and they had trouble finding meaning in the work that they were doing. Some were experiencing the adrenaline rush that you have with battle. Then you're depleted of that when you come home. So they became seeking of adrenaline junkie kind of approaches. There was a lot of things going on, but what was the worst part of it is that they had not deployed as a unit or as a group of, 30, 40, 50 people or 100 people. They deployed as an individual. And as an individual, they went over, and an individual when they came back. And not only did they have this very lonely, individualized experience, but so did their families. Their spouse was left alone, and no camaraderie of a group of everybody's spouses going away and coming back and a unified community to go through this process and journey together. So when they returned, they didn't know that what they were experiencing was not unique. They were all just experiencing it as individuals. So I stood in front of about 450 one weekend and said, look, I'd like to build a program that does a better job of supporting you in your reintegration with your families and your jobs and your life. I'm not entirely sure what that needs to look like, but I bet you do. I bet you know what it needs to look like. And if you would like to help me build this, I would love your support and help. And so on top of our day jobs and our regular jobs, we began to try to gather information. And the first thing we did was to go look to see, is there somewhere, someplace in the world where this exists already? And unfortunately, there was not, because this was the first war where we were plucking individuals and sending them as individuals. And that was very unique. So the experience was very unique. So we went around and we pulled the best of the best from internationally, actually. And we discovered, and we worked with psychologists and therapists and all sorts of experts to find what is it that we need to do. And we built a program. We created a curriculum. We screened and then built facilitators. We had keynote speakers that were the best in the country, talking about the fact that we've had this almost a ritualistic cleansing necessary since as far back as the Greek and Trojan Wars. And that one of the challenges was you could be in war one day and then on a plane and back in civilian life in the middle of your suburban community in 24 hours. And this is a shock to the system. So there was a lot to discuss. There were even small group sessions that were why I want to go back. Imagine you're the spouse of someone who's been holding down the fort for a year. Your warrior goes off. They come back and now they're home And one of the first things you hear them say in the first week or month that they're back is that they want to go back. And this was devastating to that partner who takes it very personally, who is thinking, my marriage must be over. How could they even say this? But when you're in a room and you ask this group of people together, how many of you want to go back? And 100% of them raise their hand. You realize, okay, this is not about me at all. There is something entirely different going on. So we did a lot of training in this weekend. We did some baseline metrics beforehand. We did some metrics at the end of the weekend. And then we had a follow-up 3 months later, and 100% of people recommended this program for others and said it was incredibly beneficial. We had feedback that included things like, you saved my marriage. We had written letters that said, you saved my life. And we actually even did an honoring dinner, a thank you dinner. Imagine you drop everything in your life, you go over to war, you experience war, you come back, and you're reintegrated, and no one ever says thank you. Not even once. No one. And so one of the things we did was a banquet, and we said thank you. And I gave them a certificate that I actually had to create. I had to draft it and create it and make it pretty. And I did one for the spouses or the partners as well. And it wasn't even in existence, Richard. So we did this, and I had very, senior Navy men who had served, 20 years with salty tears, hugging me and just saying, thank you. Thank you for saying thank you. This was really moving, and I'm grateful that you noticed. It was an amazing program. I built it for my command. I was the commanding officer, and I built it for my command with the hopes that it would get shared to other locations. And in fact, I was then asked to take it throughout the Southwest region. Eventually, it went nationally. Eventually, it was protected by a yellow ribbon panel funding. And 20 years later, it is still in existence, serving our community of not only Navy, but other military service members and their spouses. And I'm really, really proud of it. It was a team effort. It was an extraordinary journey, and perhaps some of the most intrinsically rewarding work I will ever do.
Darlene, I've got to step in straight away. A couple of things. Well, I noticed immediately where you kept saying we, and I think that's so empowering. I think so many people have been fixed that they feel like they're broken there, and someone else has fixed them, telling them how to live their lives. The fact that your approach is that we created this and we did this, and it was a team effort, and we did it together, and we healed ourselves, is a really wonderful message for my audience and for any veteran out there, that you're being empowered to heal yourself. And that's the one thing that really resonates with me about your program, is that it's not you fixing them, because they've had that all their lives, where someone's telling them, give them an order to do it and come back, whatever. And they've been ordered to, as you say, go off singly, fight in a war, come back, and no one's appreciating you of it. Like you're just like a peg in a hole. That your whole process, which you created from nothing, but you made certain it was a we program, not me fixing it, but it was we doing it together, teamwork. And even the idea of saying thank you, even though you had to create the forms, that was from the feedback you got from the we. Through the we, you came up with a form, but it wasn't you saving the world and you doing this kind of stuff. It wasn't me, which is a wonderful message that comes across to people, that you saw the bigger picture. It had to be a we solution. It had to be including the spouse and the veteran. It had to be them making this program and making this program work. And based on my impression hearing you, is that you really focused on making sure that this program was a we program for the veteran and the spouse, that they were creating this solution and you were just kind of guiding it, but they were doing all the work. I think that is a powerful message to people who are coming back from any turmoil at all, that we want you to be the solution, not I'm fixing you or someone else can fix you. We want you to be the solution. And that's what I try to do to my own clients. And the way you worded it, I can't stop singing your praise. I think I'm going to start calling you darling, like my father. So darling, thank you very much. And please continue. I'm loving this. I'm really glad you come on my show.
Richard, it was really, we did offer this backdrop of, here are the various resources that can be available to you, right? This was just the beginning, right? This was the stepping point off one, identify that there is a solution and it's okay. What you're going through is normal. It is appropriate. Nobody should go to war and come back and not be affected by that. And that here's what a transformational growth looks like, and that you can do that. And it's going to happen for you as well. And we had some eye movement desensitization reprocessing. We had chaplains. We had we even had a session of writing a love letter to your spouse. So we were reconnecting couples as well. So it was just the beginning. But to your point, this is a journey of it was a team effort, and it was the responsibility of the person to, one, show up, and then to carry on that growth afterwards. And I will tell you, one of the hardest things was I had this one woman who stands out for me. She was a commanding officer of a unit, and she was in training on her way overseas. And basically, the heavy year that they were putting her through in this physical training broke her back, and she didn't make it over there. And she didn't feel worthy of attending this because she wasn't a returning warrior. It was a returning warrior weekend. She didn't believe she was a returning warrior. She didn't believe she was entitled to any of the healing opportunities, or even any thanks, quite honestly. And it took me repeated efforts of trying to persuade her to come to the weekend. And I finally did get her to the weekend, and I got her to listen and attend and participate and even get some EMDR. And she just cried and hugged me afterwards. And she said, I didn't feel deserving, but now I do. And thank you for making sure I got this help. So it was a really powerful, it was just powerful. And I remember thinking at the time, Richard, I'm so young to have peaked, and I'll never do anything this great again. And how sad is that I'm so young at this point in my life, and I'll never do anything better than this.
Darlene, I've got to tell you, please don't think I'm undermining what you've achieved. What you've done is phenomenal. I love the idea that it's a we program, but you came up with the idea. That's the main thing. If you weren't here, it wouldn't have happened. So we can't belittle your part in this. This is huge. The fact you had an idea to create such a program and look for all the avenues and what to add to it is, words can't describe what you've achieved. I talk to my clients about the fact that if our working with you helps to save one soul, maybe it's that lady who broke her back, and that's so that person finds themselves and rediscovers who they are meant to be, and they make peace with their past, and they go on, they have a wonderful life, and they get married and they have children, and down maybe in 3 or 4 generations, one of their children created cures for cancer or AIDS. No one will know the work that you did, Darlene, or the work that I did, but God will know, and that's all that matters.
Right.
So if we only reach one soul, we may not get any accolades or rewards on this earth. You may be bypassed. Well, you've peaked, Darlene. Now you can go back to the shadows and won't be seen again. But in your work you've done in this Returning Warrior program, if you save one soul, God will have a host of angels lined up at the gates of heaven for you. You'll be paraded in and sitting beside Jesus. You won't believe what he's going to do for you for saving one soul. All we need to do in our life is save one soul. It's that important, and I think what you're doing, that's the work you're doing. And I think it is phenomenal. And I don't mean in any way to undermine or belittle what you've done, because it's wonderful.
Thank you, Richard. And I want to say this to your audience, because I will share that this program, and even my ability to see that people were hurting and struggling, was born out of my own PTSD, my own trauma, my own challenges that I had faced. I don't know that if I hadn't had my own experiences, I don't know that I would have even noticed that they were hurting. I just think I walked around a tad bit oblivious when my life was just so golden and perfect, and only because of my own very tough experiences. A first husband, emotionally, physically abusive, second husband, narcissistic personality disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and very, very traumatic relationship and challenge, and even divorcing and getting my children safe. So it was really, really tough. But it was because of that and my own therapies that I even knew what EMDR was, that I knew to get stress management. And I understood that there could be transformational growth that came from those hard points in our life. So I just think that we can create some of the most amazing things in connecting with people, just like you have, just like you've taken your history and the challenges you faced in your life, and you've now used that as a leverage to catapult not just you into a world where you're helping other people, but all those other people into helping themselves.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a Christian. Please forgive me for a moment. There's two characters in the Bible that talk about you. One is the book of Job, and the other is Paul. The book of Job was this guy. Have you ever read the book of Job? But he suffered terrible trauma. Like, he's probably the first PTSD case, like 2,000 years ago, and everything happened. His wives were taken on his camels and you name it. And his friends betrayed him and no one thanked him. No one was nice to him. Like, the most horrific case of PTSD probably you can ever imagine. But he stayed the course and he didn't lose his faith. Sometimes it got watered down and but he kind of tried to stay close to it. And finally, God said, for getting this far and suffering through that, I'm going to give you everything back sevenfold or tenfold and whatever. And the other one is Paul. And people don't really notice about Paul. Paul was probably the last disciple, and he in his day he never knew Jesus, but he used to hunt down Christians and throw them to the lions and murder them. Like, he was this really horrible Roman Jew. And one day in the road to Damascus, God said, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he turned to be blind and whatever. And then finally he turned him from Saul to Paul. But the story was he had this affliction. Now, they think it may have been some kind of like a droopy eye or something. There's something, disfigurement he had, or some disorder or some limp or whatever he had. But he kept asking God to take it from him. And God said, no, I'm going to leave with this, because this is what's going to make you into the person you're going to become. This memory you have, this trauma you're suffering, this is what's going to drive you forward to achieve. So again, like, the book of Paul is written about us. Again, it's so powerful when you understand these and you read these books and you understand them. It's like there's a book written 2,000 years ago that tells us about our lives, and God gave us this trauma. And people go, "What do you mean God gave us this trauma?" Look, He gave you your trauma of your two husbands, that you would create a warrior program, returning warrior program. If you'd never suffered trauma, as you said, you probably would have thought of creating a program. It was out of the ashes that you rose like a phoenix. And every one of your veterans you work with, they rise out of the ashes to become a phoenix. And because they've suffered their trauma, that trauma makes them stronger. I tell my clients that the family you grew up in, like when the veteran returns home, before you go off to war, you're a perfect fit for your partner. But once we go off to war, we suffer a conflict, we change, and we no longer fit into the role we played before we went away. We're like a square peg in a round hole. Nothing wrong with your wife, nothing wrong with your spouse, your husband, but we have changed, and it's changed us in some way. And unless we find some way of treating the change, we'll never fit back into our tribe. And that's what spouses find out. The husband comes home and he wants to go off again. And it's like, why would they choose war again than staying with me? And it's not that the spouse, there's nothing wrong with the spouse or the children or the home. They just don't fit in anymore. And as I say, if they hadn't come across a program called the Returning Warrior Workshop, those marriages that would have died because they didn't fit in anymore. We had to find some program which you created to help them to turn back into, maybe not the person they were before, but certainly to a more likable likeness to that person, that they can see the benefit of returning home and see the love and see all that stuff that was missing. And that simple thank you might have been the crux to help them become normal human beings again. That they're stuck in this war zone psyche, and they can't fit in with normal people because they're so wired to react, because that's what they've been conditioned to do. That your program enabled them to finally kind of step back and kind of go, that bit's over. I've been thanked for my service. I've been Now I can kind of let go of that energy and then find that path to reconnecting with my spouse. I think the work you've done is phenomenal. I have a gift to share with you and for your clients. You mentioned about writing a love letter to your spouse. There's a really cool practice that was given for grief about 20 years ago. I don't know who gave it to me, I can't remember, but it was the most wonderful gift. So what you do is you write a letter. So Darlene, you write a letter to your ex-husband. You write from at the front page, "Dear ex-husband, love Darlene." And this page, you're allowed to write anything you want. It doesn't have to be a love letter. It can be a hate letter. You're allowed to write whatever you want on this page. You can F and blind, but you only have one page. And then when you're finished, turn the page over. And then with your non-dominant hand, so if you're right-handed, now write with your left hand, you write, "Dear Darlene, love your ex-husband." And because you got to voice your voice on the other side, you have to speak for them. But because you're writing with your non-dominant hand, it activates your subconscious mind. And the memory of him before they became a narcissist, like your soulmate, that's the person who writes back to you. And because of your subconscious mind, you won't be in charge of what you write. What you write will come from your subconscious mind. It's a great way of being able to have a conversation with someone you can't speak to FaceTime, that you can hear their thoughts from the depths of your soul. You can hear a different perspective. And so you can write to yourself, "Dear Darlene, love Darlene," attack yourself, and then, "Dear Darlene, love Darlene, I'm very sorry you feel that way, but I did the best I could." You know, that kind of stuff. You know, you can have that conversation. And what you write on the second page with your non-dominant hand, you will not be in control of. This is a wonderful healing practice for writing to someone who's passed away, someone you're estranged from, to yourself, even to God. "God, you motherfucker, blah, blah." And then write back and God says, "Well, I'm very sorry." You know what I mean? So that's my gift to you. Thank you for what you're doing. Continue, Darlene.
Well, that's really cool. And it's funny that you bring that up, the whole grief journey. I will share with you that I was never, after husband 1 and 2, was never ever going to date again, ever. And in fact, my whole journey into health and wellness started at the end of the second marriage. Actually, if you go back, it actually started earlier as the stress of those relationships began to take their toll on my health. By the time I left them, I was really struggling with a variety of autoimmune disorders, and they took my thyroid, I had surgery, I had a lot of things happen, and I was never going to date, never. Like, I obviously have very bad taste in men. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm never doing this again. But I actually first became just great friends with the most amazing man on the planet, who ultimately I did date and ultimately did marry, was an angel on earth, truly sent from heaven to me, and as the greatest gift. And I had such huge appreciation. Funny, smart, just amazing, father, husband, everything to my daughters and his sons. And anyway, we had this beautiful marriage together. And then he was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. And then I began the journey deeply into what can we do from a health perspective, and tried everything. I mean, when I say we tried everything, Richard, we did every therapy modality you can think of, from mold detox to hyperbaric chamber to electromagnetic frequency mat to microcurrent to osteopath. Obviously, super clean diet, exercise and hydrogen water. But we also did Dr. Bredeson's protocol. We even went out of country 4 times for mesenchymal stem cells for infusions and injections. Nothing made a difference. And that is where part of why we're talking today is because I actually discovered through my hairdresser, who said, I know you went out of country for stem cells, which nothing helped. But my neighbor is doing this light therapy that activates your own body's stem cells. And that was where we began sort of a journey, which I will share with you, this quarter-size light therapy patch. The last thing I believed was going to be able to make a difference. So if there's such a thing as a reverse placebo effect, that would have been me, because I had no belief, and certainly not enough for both of them. But I was like, well, I need help. He needs help. I needed help from an autoimmune disorder situation, as well as depression I had a broken foot and sprained ankle. I had a lot going on, and I'm taking care of someone who's, by the time I found this therapy, was age 4 and couldn't get a glass of water, was sleeping most of the day away, was no longer his personality, no longer even trying to be funny. And in just the period of 24 hours, he stopped taking that 3.5-hour nap. He began engaging. He began talking. He began to be funny again. He regained his sense of smell, which he'd lost 20 years ago. I mean, all these amazing benefits. I had, here's somebody who had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, POTS. I had migraines. I had rosacea. I had depression. I had all of these things, right? And in very little time, I would say 3 weeks, the depression lifted. I never had to take the medicine that I had taken for decades for POTS. I don't even know where my migraine medicine is. I didn't go anywhere without migraine medicine. I had it in every car, in every person, every room of the house. And I don't even know where that is. I don't have it anymore. Things that had been decades in my life just disappeared. Why? Because God made our bodies so smart with an innate wisdom that knows how to heal. The stem cells that made us, the first cells that came together. Well, I didn't know that when you're 30, half of them are dormant, and when you're 60, they're almost all dormant. So what we can do is wake them up. We can get them working for us, rejuvenating, regenerating, repairing, and therein tap in our body's innate intelligence without drugs, without side effects, without any interactions, and get our body to go to work for us in a way that is just extraordinary. So I talked about how I wasn't sure if I would ever do anything as intrinsically rewarding as the Returning Warrior workshop. But I will say that when I came upon this technology and discovered its capability, I was blown away. And initially I was a little mad. Where has this been? Why is it that this is not available? Why is this not on the front of Time magazine? Why isn't this in the news? How is it possible that we have something that's this powerful that is so unknown? And then I find out things like, Tom Brady wears these patches, and we have a ton of athletes from Michael Phelps to David Beckham to Serena Williams to the Kansas City Chiefs to Mike Tyson. I mean, Secretary of Health and Human Services, all of these people are wearing these patches. And I'm like, what? How is this possible? So I began to help my family and help others. I will admit that it was frustrating that I found it so late in the game for Jim, that as much as it did help his situation and gave us a quality of life that we hadn't had at that point for another 18 months. He did pass away a year ago. And part of my grief, your grief journey is a journey. It's not a one day on and off signal. It is a journey. And so I think that idea of writing a love letter is a beautiful one to speak to my, I don't waste an iota of time on ex-husband number 1 or 2, but I would be delighted to write a love letter to my husband, who was just so beautiful, because there's just a lot of aching, missing of him, of the joy. And I make a very determined, intense effort to live in gratitude, to keep a gratitude journal, and to do a lot of the things that you talk about, to manifest a beautiful day with prayer and being grateful ahead of something even happening. I thank God for this day and all that he's provided. And I make it a great day, and I live in a place of joy, because that is what God wants, and that's what my husband would want. He would be so mad at me if he thought if I lived here in a sorrowful state every day and just crawled under a rock or into the couch like I kind of felt like doing for a long time right after his death. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I will absolutely do that love letter to him, and I'll use my right hand and then I'll use my left hand, and we'll see what comes out.
I've got to tell you, myself and my father, he was old school. It's like he wasn't really into feelings kind of stuff, blah blah. And he was a really kind man, and he was much older. And so when he passed away, I remember When he passed, he got multiple strokes. And I was on my day off from work, and the nurse was in the house with him, and I'm up and lying in bed, and the nurse shouts up to me, and he's had like 33 mini strokes, and we get an ambulance, not going into hospital. And all my family are away or in America or Spain or whatever. I'm the only one there, and I have to hold him for basically 3 days having multiple strokes, whatever. And he finally passed. My family got back in time to say goodbye to him, whatever. I remember I had terrible anger towards him over certain things and really regret and whatever. And I wrote to him. And then I wrote back to him. I wrote back from him to me. And it shocked me what he said to me. I won't tell you what it is. It wasn't what I was expecting when he used my non-dominant hand and wrote back to me. But it made peace between us. And then I have to tell you, about a week later, I have this dream. And I wake up. I'm not awake, but I'm awake in my dream. My father and myself are standing in the garden. And he has a towel wrapped around his waist. And he's saying to me, Richard, you go on and live your life. Like this, this kind of like this, you meet him in person. Like this letter writing really did something for me that was mind blowing. And I'm back to the light therapy. I love light therapy. And I love sound therapy as well. I think you heard the sound therapy one. I got one where someone did sound therapy and had lights, flashing lights over my face, and they had this, and it was a beautiful thing. And I think your energy when you speak about light therapy is so powerful. I think you found your next Returning Warrior workshop too, because I'm listening to your energy, and it must be the energy you had when you did Returning Warrior. So if you think you're past your peak, you're only starting. Your peak is, you're going to peak again. I'm afraid that this.
I have to tell you, you're not wrong. I have helped so many. I've probably helped over 700 people at this point in life, and I have helped people with extraordinary things that our medical system would say there's no cure for. One of my favorite stories is a friend, Vicky. She had an open oozing wound in her neck for 10 years. She had an abscess cyst in her mouth, and they basically said, we're going to have to surgically cut out your bottom jaw and your bottom 3 molars to get this infection out. There's necrosis that is set in and your gums are turning black. And she just said, I'm too vain. You're not cutting out my jaw and collapsing my face. It's not happening. We patched her, and in 3 months, that open oozing wound closed up. Her jaw, lymph nodes went back to normal. The necrosis disappeared. The abscess cyst disappeared. All of it went away because you know what? When you activate your body's immune system and stem cells and the ability to heal itself, it knows what to do. It knows what to do.
Well, I don't believe I saw it. It's on YouTube. There's a video about it as well. There's a case of a woman with cancer, and she goes to this doctor who's a Christian, and he puts his hand over where the cancer is, and he uses light therapy or sound therapy at the same time. And he does this praying over her body. And on the camera, you can see the camera receding until finally it's gone. There's a video of it on YouTube somewhere. And I have the video in my room. And it's about the power of prayer, and there's miracles happening all the time. And sound therapy and light therapy, I think, the light of the world, the salt of the world, I think it's really powerful. We don't tap into enough things because there's no money in it for the powers that be. So they kind of go, it's terrible. I hate sounding like a conspiracy theorist. I really do. I don't like conspiracy theorists because it undermines your work. But when you think about this, people keep saying to me, look, if there's no money in it, they're not going to pursue it, and light therapy and sound therapy is fantastic. And prayer is phenomenal. And I have to tell you, I worked with a client who had terrible disassociation. It got so bad because as a child, her father was so abusive that she developed her muscles locked in her neck, and she couldn't turn. She wouldn't turn, she'd turn her whole body to look behind her. So I used tapping and acupressure and kind of visualization on this woman. And she'd had this thing for 40 years. She wasn't able to turn her head. She had to turn her whole body to look behind her. And she'd been in our therapy for months, and nothing was working. And they sent her to me because I was a crackpot with this EFT and whatever. But so anyways, my spirituality and EFT and visualizations. And next thing, about 10 minutes later, all you can hear is, I can move my head. I can move my head. Like, it was gone after 40 years. It was gone like in the space of 3 minutes. And we did this thing where we did tapping on the energy points of the body, and we did acupressure, pressure on these points. And we visualized that God sent a host of angels down to take this pain from her, and her father's no longer in the room, whatever, blah, blah. And next thing when you say, well, I can move my head. This 57-year-old woman was screaming, laughing with joy, ran out of the room to tell her therapist that it was gone. And like, that was it, So I think we don't give God enough chances to perform miracles, and we don't use the natural things, like our health, like our diet, being on the right diet, cutting out all the processed food, cutting out all this medication. Our bodies weren't created to take man-made medications. They're created to take light and salt and sound and tapping our energy points in our bodies. I think that idea. I think you're I think you're finding your way to your next peak, Darlene. I think you're really on the road. I could talk to you for hours, but I have an appointment at 10 o'clock and 11 and 12, so I'm going to have to bring it to a close very shortly. But I would love to have you on again, because what you have to share is phenomenal. I would ask you, if you mentioned in your on your profile how to restore vitality to your on a circular level. Can you kind of sum up how that works? So we can maybe pick 5 points. It's an awful lot, but for the next maybe 10 or 15 minutes, could you talk about maybe 10 or 5 or 10 points you would share with veterans, with spouses, with normal people, how they can they can raise their levels up?
Yeah. It's really not hard. It's not as hard as you would expect. When you put on a stem cell activation patch, you're not just activating your stem cells. You are actually elevating copper peptide. Now, peptides are all the rage right now, right? Everybody's injecting peptides of all different kinds. But imagine being able to wear a patch that within 24 hours elevates a copper peptide and resets 4,000 genes to their younger, healthier state in that 24 hours. This copper peptide, it improves your brain coherence. It reduces inflammation. It improves heart. In fact, every 6 weeks of wearing this patch for 12 hours on and 12 hours off, you actually improve your heart function so much so that every 6 weeks it becomes 8 weeks younger. You can actually look on a brain map on my website. I actually have the visuals and see within 6 weeks, you can see the inflammation changing the colors in a thermal imaging. You can see the improvements in all parts of health. There's really nothing that your body doesn't know how to heal if you give it the chance. And so I will share with you, there's the patches. That's one thing. There's also the most, energy, right? We are energetic beings, and we just sort of don't give ourselves enough credit with both the ability of our voices, what we say to yourself. I know that you've talked about this on the podcast as well, that the words we use make a difference. What we say and think and say to ourselves, our cells are listening to everything we say to ourselves out loud or in our heads. So yes. It matters what you say. And then I will also share with you that I drink a water that is the best water on the planet. It is charged with, it's basically hydrogen water, structured water, infused with 6 wavelengths of light. And it actually releases the light in my body, changing the electrical charge around that cell. It is proven in 7 studies to enhance and regenerate cellular function, and immeasurable by blood tests and thermal imaging and biopulsar. And not only does it improve, it's obviously clear water. It's heavy metals and microplastics and chlorine and forever chemicals and pesticides, and all that's been removed. Best filter on the planet. But it is proven and fast. One person, the results were 2 minutes. In the other 79 people, 15 seconds. And we're talking age reversal of the cell. So when a cell is old, it's like a raisin. And when it's young, it's like a grape. And what we can watch is that cell age reverse in just 10 minutes by 2 to 3 weeks. And so we're seeing enhanced longevity, improved cognition and metabolism, and recovery of entire health systems. I have a friend of mine, this water machine is so powerful. She drives 20 minutes to my house every day to get water and 20 minutes back. It's just extraordinary. So there are tools. I think of myself a little bit as a light warrior, offering hope and vitality to people who have lost it. We have a tendency so often to believe the doctors. We give them so much power and we let them diagnose us and say, you have this. No, you don't have that. You may have symptoms of this or that, but let's never forget that the 3rd leading cause of death is medical error. And the 4th is adverse reaction to prescription medicines, adverse drug reaction. So look at number 3 and number 4 are all in the normal Western medicine world. So why not step out of that world for a moment? Because they're not going to cure root cause of anything. Your body knows it. Your body doesn't need a diagnosis. Your body doesn't need an insurance code. Your body just needs your own body's innate wisdom and how to heal. And we can tap into that through all different ways. And these are just a few, like how we speak, stem cell activation patches, really amazing light infused water, and other. I mean, I have a host of tools in my toolbox, but I don't think there's anything more powerful than these patches and this water, quite honestly. But there are other things. And so when people have lost hope, they really can have it back. There's just so much ability in the world to treat things that are, people would call them everyday modern miracles. I'm not allowed to make medical claims. I'm not allowed to say cures, treats, or diagnoses, anything. But I will tell you, I have never seen more miracles in my entire life. And you're absolutely right. I am absolutely so passionate about helping people, because when you take the focus off yourself and you actually just serve others and you help other people, boy, do you get that back in spades. And so part of my healing journey for myself has been to help others heal.
I love that. I really do. A couple of things I want to ask you. The stem cells, are they easy to get? I'm going to put all your details down on this podcast.
In fact, we actually have a manufacturing plant in Ireland. We are in 82 countries. There's no prescription required. You can get them from my website at viamreverseaging.com. You just can order them. They get delivered in a little envelope. I assist people. I hold your hand through the process, but the only requirement is to drink water. There's no contraindications with any kind of medications. You can keep taking all the medications, although I will tell you this, people come off of their medications. I'm no longer on thyroid. I talked about migraine. I talked about people come off their blood pressure medicines, their cholesterol medicines. They come off of all sorts of, there's no depression medicines anymore. There's lots of things that they come off of, which is why we have to be really careful, because Big Pharma does not like the fact that we're able to take people off of a lot of different medications very quickly.
The other question I have is this a life? I'm not saying I don't want to sound wrong. Someone wants a quick fix. Can we take stem cells for a week or for a month and then stop?
No,
or do we have to take them forever?
You don't have to take them forever, but you need to take them you need to wear the patches at least 1 month for every decade you are old. So I think you're close to mid 60s.
You're very good.
I think I heard a podcast where you said you were 65. But I will tell you this, Richard, I'm 61, and I will tell you that my biological age is 40. Now,
I have to tell you guys, this is an audio interview. You're not going to see Darlene. I'm thinking she's in her late 30s. I'm looking at this thing. How can she be a commander for 20 years and have had 3 husbands and daughters? She is stunningly beautiful. Her skin is fantastic. I'm looking at her hands. She had her hands kind of in front on the desk, like she was folding her hands, and there's not a wrinkle on her fingers. It's hilarious how stunning she's looking. I'm thinking, this woman has to be like 38 or something. She's been 20 years. How does that work? That doesn't make any sense. So I have to say, Darlene, you're looking fantastic. And I work by the hands. Look at my hands, are all wrinkled. Your hands are they're pristine.
Well, think about the stress of my life. Think about the stress of being a care provider for 4 years. That is stressful, folks. And God bless all the care providers in the world, because you don't really even begin to fathom how hard that is until you do it. But it takes a toll on your body. So for me, when I went to get this test, my biological age test, I was a little worried it would show me in my 80s. Like, I had no idea what to expect. So I will tell you, when it came back 40, I was doing a happy dance. But that's 100% the patches, because I've lived too stressful a life for it to not be.
Okay, so one thing I want to say, if for any reason you can't afford these stem cells, patches, or the water machine, or whatever that is, ordinary water doesn't work. We all drink 8 glasses of water a day, and bottled water, whatever. Even bottled water has microplasms in it and chlorine. What you can do is you can put in a pinch of pink salt, a pinch of cumin, and a dash of apple cider vinegar into your water. Now, only small, but on an empty stomach. So you can have this 40 minutes before you eat breakfast in the morning, maybe in the late afternoon, have another sip of it. Not really at bedtime, but twice a day, or 3 times a day, when your food is gone from your body, you can take this water along with your ordinary water. It will help you an awful lot to heal your system inside. And then when you can afford to get the stem cell patches, and you can get this hydrogen machine, if you're going to look anything like Darlene, I'm telling you, you're going to be really impressed, because this woman looks so young. I wish I could do it as a video podcast, but it's audio, I'm afraid. But Darlene, it's been a real joy. I'm sorry I have to leave you, but I've got to get ready for 1 in 10 minutes. I'd stay with you for hours. You've got so much to share, and we haven't touched on half of what you have to offer. So I'm going to take the option of having a rain check, if that's okay with you. And maybe if you're free sometime in the future, I can have you back on to talk more about those two products, because I think that's really where we have to go now. You've spoken about the returning warrior. Now we have to talk about how to age gracefully, or in a youthful way, we turn into babies again. So, Darlene, I want to thank you very much for coming on board. If you'd like to share one or two little things with the audience, and we will have you again. Darlene, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It's an honor to be with you. Thanks for the service that you're providing out in the world. And I just want to leave people with the notion of taking charge of your own health. And, I'm a strong believer that we are not meant to live exhausted, that we're not meant to live in quiet suffering. And too many people are. We're meant to shine and to serve and to feel fully alive. But investing in your health isn't a luxury. It's the down payment on every single dream you've ever dared to chase. And there's nobody in this world that can't have hope. And I'm happy to do, with your audience, a free consultation. You just go to my website and connect with me. This is my passion. This isn't my day job. I actually have a different day job, but this is clearly my passion. I love helping people. So please feel free to connect with me. I'm sure you'll have my website, which is iamreverseaging.com. And I would love to talk to you again. Richard, thank you again for the honor of being on your podcast.
The honor was all mine, Darlene. I'm doing a thing. I'm going to call you Darling again. Forgive me. So please do reach out to Darlene. The idea of a free consultation, you're worthy of that. It's like the lady who felt she couldn't go to the returning warrior because she never went overseas. You have value and meaning and purpose. And Darlene said this isn't her full-time job. This is her passion, and she wants to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out. Have that conversation. Again, you're not paying for anything. You're going to learn so much, and then you can walk away and choose afterwards. But give yourself that gift of knowing that you are important, you are special, that God wants you to get well, and he's put Darlene in your path, and she's offering a free consultation for you to find that path. So when this podcast is promoted, I'll have all our information down on the page. You can look up Darlene Greene. You'll probably find her on Facebook under her name, or Darlene Greene. And then your website is called, say it one more time.
iamreverseaging.com.
Okay. Yep. I am reverseaging.com. Okay.
That's right.
Well,
That's
okay.
Great.
Guys, thank you all very much for coming. Darlene, I'm going to have you again. This has been fantastic.